Come on, let's go travel.
In the late 1800s, Shreveport was growing rapidly as a river commerce hub in northwest Louisiana. Like many boom towns, it struggled with how to manage the social vices that came with rapid economic growth, especially prostitution and gambling. Prior to the formal district, brothels and working girls operated openly near the riverfront, known locally as the Baltour. Fannin Street ran from the downtown riverbank into the city's lower line, St. Paul's Bottoms. It became the center of nightlife and vice, lined with brothels and parlors, small and large, saloons and dance halls, gambling dens, and music halls. Imagine Shreveport, Louisiana in the early 1900s. The trains are rolling, the riverboats are docked, and a part of town near Fannin Street buzzes with a kind of energy you won't find in the downtown business district. At the heart of this world was a woman whose name became almost legendary in Shreveport history, Annie McCune. Annie was not born into wealth or status. In fact, she arrived in Shreveport shortly after the Civil War as what historians call a camp follower, a term used for those who moved with armies and frontier settlements in search of opportunity. Somehow, through resilience, business sense, and sheer drive, she worked her way into running her own establishment in the district that would later be defined as St. Paul's Bottoms, centered around Fannin Street. In those days, prostitution wasn't hidden on the edges of town. It was contained in a specific quarter that the city tolerated and regulated. Annie took advantage of that, and her house quickly became known as one of the most respectable and profitable in the district. Unlike the small, rough buildings on the muddy streets, her home was elegant and well managed, the kind of place that spoke of discipline and dignity, even in a trade that many in society looked down upon. Annie's rise wasn't accidental. She learned how to run a business, manage people, and, importantly, navigate the politics of a vice district. Local officials looked the other way if things were orderly and paid. Annie made sure her workers were clean, presentable, and treated with respect. She took them to cultural events like performance at the Grand Opera House, yet she was careful about appearances, never letting them shop in the same stores as the wives of her clients. Her discretion and intelligence earned her a reputation that set her apart from many others in the district. For more than a decade, from around 1903, when the city formally opened St. Paul's Bottoms as a regulated zone, until the district's closing in 1917, Annie McCune was a presence in Shreveport's nightlife and economy. She was considered one of the top madams in the city, and her financial success was significant in the era when few women had access to independent wealth. But Annie was more than just a business operator. She became known in the community as something of a philanthropist. Records note that she contributed to veterans' causes and helped orphans, using at least some of her income for acts of benevolence. In the end, Annie's life came to a dramatic close. She passed away June 13, 1920, after suffering pneumonia following the amputation of her left leg due to gangrene in her foot, a detail that humanizes her final days far more than any rumor or legend ever could. Today, Annie McCune lies at Oakland Cemetery in Shreveport, buried next to her daughter or granddaughter, a reminder that women who once stood in the center of Shreveport's most notorious district is part of the city's history forever. So when you think of St. Paul's Bottoms and Fannin Street, remember this: Annie McCune was not just a madam in a vice district. She was a businesswoman, a community figure, and a complex individual living at the intersection of society's judgment and its hidden economies. Her story reminds us that history is made not only by the well documented heroes we learn about in school, but also the people whose lives were lived in the shadows, yet whose influence helped shape in the city's culture and story. Now you're looking at some of the pictures in St. Bottoms, the stores that are located in the area, some of the residents that are in the area, and coming up is a picture of Annie McCune herself. This is what she looked like. And here is her announcement in the obituary in the newspaper of her death. Here are some of the women that were prostitutes. This is a mulatto prostitute. They actually purchased mulatto prostitutes to come up to the Shreveport district. And again, here are some pictures of some of the brothel prostitutes. Could you imagine what life was like for these women? This is a piano man that played in the brothel homes. So they also had entertainment inside and gambling inside of the brothel homes as well. So it wasn't just that you just walked in. I mean, there was liquor that was served, of course. There was food that was served there, of course. And all of these things you did have to pay for. Me just imagining like the plumbing and them, bathing themselves in a wash bowl and getting themselves ready for the next client, or as they would say, the next trick, is just crazy. If you've ever seen the movies Harlem Nights, if you ever seen the movie Lady Sings the Blues, you kind of get a gathering of what the prostitutes did and how they cleaned up in their rooms. As you see, the dogs and I were walking the cemetery and looking for Annie McCune's grave site. I took them with me, and we are approaching the grave site soon. This is Oakland Cemetery, and a lot of veterans are at rest here. I also tend to think or want to know if there are any plantation owners that lived in this cemetery, because this cemetery goes all the way back to the 1800s, or you can look on some of the tombstones. And here we are. This is Annie McCune's gravesite, and it said that her granddaughter and her daughter are buried here as well. So at first I didn't know when I looked at the markers, because she has quite a large tombstone. I was wondering who were the other people that were buried with her. So this is her daughter, and the two markers are the granddaughter. So her family is in this little space buried with her. And one of the things that behooved me when I came to the gravesite, because this is an historic place, it's not well taken care of or preserved. The dogs, it was pretty warm, so gave them some water and we're out. Gratitude for watching.